Nobody expected the Indiana Fever to win this game by nearly 30 points. But strangely enough, the biggest story wasn't the scoreboard. It wasn't Kelsey Mitchell. It wasn't even the Sparks. It was what everyone noticed the moment the cameras showed the crowd. The game itself was supposed to be a massive test. With Caitlin Clark sidelined due to a back injury, the Fever traveled to Los Angeles, facing a team ready to exploit her absence. Instead, Indiana took control from the very first tip-off. They ran their offense with ruthless efficiency, hitting over 55% of their shots from the field and easily crossing the 100-point mark for the second consecutive game. It ended in a lopsided 24-point blowout, a road rout that silenced the home crowd. The primary engine behind this absolute clinic was Kelsey Mitchell. She played 26 near-flawless minutes, scoring 26 points without committing a single turnover. She hit 4 of her 6 attempts from beyond the arc and looked entirely unstoppable. With Aaliyah Boston commanding the paint and Mitchell dissecting the perimeter, the offense looked remarkably fluid. On paper, this was a statement victory, proof that the roster possessed the depth to dominate even when their rookie superstar was wearing warm-ups on the bench. The story, however, went far beyond the court. As the final buzzer sounded on the 111-87 victory, the conversation quickly shifted away from Mitchell's scoring run. The cameras began to pan upward, away from the hardwood, capturing an image that would spark a massive debate across the entire sports world. The broadcast feed panned to the upper decks of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, revealing rows of empty blue seats. On paper, the league recorded an official attendance of 16,018 fans, nearly a sellout for the 17,000-capacity arena. But the television lens told a completely different story. It captured cavernous gaps in the seating bowl, a stark visual contrast to the packed standing-room-only crowds that typically defined Indiana's home games. In the middle of this disconnect stood Sparks forward Dearica Hamby. Standing near the bench as the final minutes ticked away, her expression became the defining image of the night. She looked stunned, staring up at the quiet, half-empty sections with a look of pure disbelief. It was a silent observation that captured the emotional weight of the evening. Within minutes, social media seized on the broadcast footage. Clips of the empty seats and Hamby's reaction flooded online platforms, with fans immediately drawing a straight line to one missing factor: Caitlin Clark. The digital debate was instantaneous and polarizing. For some, the empty seats were proof of a fragile business model entirely dependent on a single rookie superstar. For others, it was an unfair critique of a fan base that still showed up in thousands. But the image remained. It forced a conversation that went far beyond the final score, exposing a deep gap between the league's official numbers and the optical reality on the ground. This visual disconnect quickly transformed from a simple stadium observation into a massive financial question. In the modern WNBA, attention translates directly to capital, and no single figure drives that capital quite like Caitlin Clark. For the sports business world, she represents far more than a point guard. She is an economic engine. Look at the reported television metrics. Throughout the 2025 season, WNBA broadcasts on ESPN and ABC averaged an unprecedented 1.3 million viewers. That represented a 6% increase year over year, driven by a 13% surge in female viewership and a 2% rise among male viewers. This is a league experiencing a historic boom, but the commercial momentum remains heavily anchored to a single number, the 22 jersey, which topped the league's merchandise sales list for consecutive years. Ticket demand tells the exact same story, with multiple Fever road dates routinely selling out months in advance, driven entirely by fans hoping to see the rookie phenom in person. But when the star attraction is missing, the economic floor shifts. The June 27th game against the Sparks still managed to draw approximately 1.1 million viewers on national television. While that audience represents a massive win compared to the league's historical ratings baseline, it also represents a noticeable drop from the averages of Clark-featured broadcasts. This is the central paradox facing the league's front offices. The Fever proved they could win by 24 points without their marquee player. The roster possesses the actual basketball depth to run a fluid, high-scoring offense. Yet the empty seats in the ratings dip reveal a stark reality. The WNBA has built a massive new audience, but a significant portion of that audience is tuning in for a solo act, leaving the business model highly vulnerable the moment that star is forced to sit out. That 111-point explosion did more than secure a win. It ignited an instant basketball debate. Indiana finished the game with just 12 turnovers, a disciplined display of ball handling that immediately became internet ammunition. StatMuse fueled the fire, revealing that the Fever's offensive rating without Clark stood at 110.4. To critics of Indiana's typical system, this was mathematical proof that the ball moved faster and the offense ran smoother when it wasn't filtering through a single superstar. But that perspective overlooks the reality of the opponent. The Los Angeles Sparks entered the matchup severely weakened, sidelined by injuries to key players like Kelsey Plum and Cameron Brink. The Sparks were in the middle of a historic defensive collapse, having just become the first team in WNBA history to surrender back-to-back games of over 110 points. A blowout against a depleted defense is a fragile foundation for a lasting takeaway. More importantly, evaluating the team solely on her absence ignores her season-long gravity, the defensive pressure she attracts that creates open lanes for teammates in the first place. Her passing and creation cannot be replaced by a one-game sample size. Yet, the speed with which this debate caught fire reveals the volatile nature of WNBA discourse. A single regular season game was immediately weaponized as a permanent referendum on Clark's actual on-court value. 2 days before the Sparks tipped off in Indianapolis, the undercurrent of physicality in the league boiled over into a national controversy. During a loose ball scramble, forward Alyssa Thomas struck Caitlin Clark in the throat with a closed fist. The on-court whistle was silent, but the subsequent fallout was deafening. Following a retrospective review, the WNBA upgraded the play to a flagrant 2, issuing a one-game suspension and a $1,000 fine. It was a swift disciplinary response, but it blew open a massive pre-existing fault line in the women's game. To some, the incident was proof of an urgent star protection problem, a targeted effort to welcome the rookie phenom with excessive force. Fever coach Stephanie White called the contact egregious and disrespectful to a generational talent. To others, the reaction itself was the problem, arguing that the play was standard, hard-nosed professional basketball, blown out of proportion by an overprotective league and a hyper-reactive media. Opposing voices rejected the cheap shot label entirely, calling the suspension ridiculous. The debate expanded far beyond a single foul. It put league officials under an intense, unforgiving microscope. Every game, every whistle, and every defensive stand was suddenly parsed for bias, turning ordinary basketball physicality into a high-stakes cultural referendum. The pressure on the WNBA was mounting. The league had to police the court while protecting its most valuable asset, all while trying not to compromise the competitive identity that had defined the sport for decades. The question is not whether the WNBA can survive without one superstar. It is whether a league built on a single pillar can ever truly grow. Until the spotlight expands to every court, the foundation remains fragile. Share your thoughts on the league's future below.